Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. He's an FBI whistleblower, former FBI agent. It's Kyle Seraphin. Kyle, how are you? Good to see you again.
I'm doing great. How you doing, Joe?
We just were talking about how we need some winter in Texas. What is the story? Why it just doesn't get cold? It got cold for a day and a half.
This is just Texas. This has always been Texas. As far as back as I can remember, I went to high school in Texas. I was a kid. It always just messed with us. Like there were times when it was freezing on Halloween, and there was times when we sweat on Christmas. So I don't know.
It doesn't make sense. 10, 15 degrees cooler, it would at least feel seasonal. So we'll work on that. We'll see if we can get something done. Let's talk about the FBI. Let's talk about what you uncovered at the FBI, what your whistleblowing was about, and then how a new era might change all of that. Remind people what it was that you were telling folks about what the FBI was doing.
So I joined the FBI in 2016. My whistleblower activity actually started in 2017, which just means that you're complaining about something that's going wrong and that it's either a violation of rule, policy, or law. So I started doing that internally. So most people don't know about all that kind of stuff, and it's not really that interesting. What people will remember is that in November of 2021, one of my disclosures, which I took to Congress, and that was a new avenue for me, was made public to the American people, and that was that the FBI was spying on parents at school board meetings. Now, specifically, what I said is that Merrick Garland might have lied under oath. That was actually the violation of law that I was reporting, and the FBI helped me out by letting me know that I wasn't welcome to come back into the office. They ended up going after me for a lot of other things as well, which was mostly COVID related. And at the end of the day, I ended up losing my job there. So I doubled down. I continued to push the envelope forward. People remember that I exposed the story about the FBI investigating Catholics in Richmond, Virginia. And I think at this point, there's probably like 17 or 18 different whistleblower disclosures that I've done either by myself or on behalf of others. And we've spawned at least 4 congressional investigations and a whole bunch at state level with different attorneys general. So there's been a lot of malfeasance, and I've just tried to be a mouthpiece for those that are inside the Bureau that don't want to lose their career. I'm happy to do it. I already lost mine, so let's go.
Well, the thing that doesn't make any sense to me, Kyle, first of all, you're a patriot, and I appreciate you looking out for us. But you're supposed to be protected. There are literally laws that say whistleblowers will be protected. Did they try to say that you did something that was not attached to what you were talking about publicly? Or they made it clear to you, okay, you did this to us, we're going to do this to you. How does that work? You should have been protected.
Well, the problem is there's 2 entities that are supposed to go out there and investigate it. But at the end of the day, the government investigates the government and determines whether or not the government was wrong. And so that seems like totally inappropriate. Yeah, so there's actually a group. This is the silliest thing, and you probably don't know this, Joe, but when you are an FBI whistleblower, your whistleblower claim is adjudicated and determined to be either valid or not by a group called OARM at the DOJ. And that stands for the Office of Attorney Recruitment and Management.
Wow, I had no idea.
The people that go to the career fairs to try to get like new attorneys out of law school and decide whether or not they're going to hire them, those are the people that decide whether you're a whistleblower. It was actually a slap in the face when it was actually developed. It was kind of a way that DOJ said, we're not going to take these people seriously. And you have about a 99% chance of being adjudicated not a whistleblower based on the odds that have been out there. So it's just not stacked in the favor of people who want to do the right thing.
Well, that's got to change. So with a change of leadership, first of all, any experience where Ray was not the guy in 21, was he? I guess he was, wasn't he?
Ray was the guy then, yeah. So I joined under Comey, and then I had a little bit of time under McCabe, who actually was in charge of the field office I worked at before he became the deputy director and then the acting director, and then Ray, yeah. So my first impression of Ray was actually really impressive. He showed up 2 hours late to his own meeting in Washington, D.C., about a 2-minute walk from the Hoover building. And he kept everybody in their seats, 2,000 employees for the entire Washington field office. He just made us sit there and wait while he talked to some of his friends.
You know, anytime somebody's questioned like a Christopher Ray, and by the way, it's Kyle Seraphin. Go in and follow him everywhere, KyleSeraphin.com. Check out his podcast over on Rumble, Kyle Seraphin. And Seraphin has PH in the middle. It's not an F. When it comes to these people in leadership at the FBI, they don't ever answer a question ever. An open hearing, a closed hearing, it's an active investigation, Kyle. Can't talk about it. But when there's supposed to be oversight by Congress, there never seems to be oversight. Do they live in a prism or in a world where they feel as though they're the top of the top, even though they're not? They're in the DOJ. They work for the executive. The oversight should be coming from Congress. But they live in a world where they think that they are the penultimate, and that's it. You can't do anything to me.
Yeah, it's a couple of tiers of that. So the way the Bureau actually structures it up and the way they actually try to create it is they want to insulate the FBI's director. This has been going on for years. And they do the thing that they refer to as bubble wrap, or that Chris Wray has called bubble wrapping. He actually said that out loud to folks when he was visiting the different field offices. He's like, I never actually get to meet the people. And he said the same thing when he was talking to Brett Baer on Fox. What he said is that I have oversight of the FBI, but he doesn't have leadership of the FBI. So once people kind of understand that, it gives this sort of plausible deniability, like, wow, I was unaware of this thing, and I'm appalled just as you are, Senator.
Wow.
This kind of nonsense. So this is actually on purpose. It's the thing that they try to do because the FBI is a big status quo machine. And at this point, it's trying to protect a very corrupt and I would say rotted, toxic leadership culture. It's probably more management than leadership. And all the people that have been kind of brought in, and they're mostly post-Obama, but they're definitely all sort of post-9/11 types. They have a very different idea of what the FBI is. They want it to be an intel agency, and they want it to serve their own purposes, which means they all get jobs and bonuses, and they get to go into the private sector afterwards. And they kind of don't care about the work that Americans think they do, which is to say frontline, basic level, complex criminal investigations, which is what the FBI is actually sort of set up to actually handle.
Right. And I think that we're confused about what the FBI's role is as well. It's Kyle Seraphin. Go to KyleSeraphin.com. So when it comes to Comey and McCabe, we know that they were spying on Trump Tower. That's it. That's done. It was on the front page, January 20th of 2017, when Trump was taking office, wiretapping at Trump Tower. We know that was in the New York Times, for God's sakes. We know that it happened. We also know that they lied to the FISA court. We know that they were doing circular news articles where you could probably opine about this more. It looks as though the FBI will take a news article, get a hold of somebody, tell them to write the news article, then they can go to court, the FISA court, and say, hey, look, there's a news article that the FBI actually set up to be put in there. All of that stuff was going on. This isn't that long ago, Kyle. Can these people with a new FBI director coming in, say Kash Patel, can they face the music, or are they scot-free from what they did in 2017 to try to stop Trump from becoming the president?
So there's two pieces. First of all, you need to have the willingness of actually going after people that violated federal law, and there's a potential that happened.
Yeah.
So you have to have internal investigations by the inspection division or by an outside entity to come in and actually adjudicate that this is a federal crime, then present it, and then you have to have like a DOJ that's actually going to go after it and say, we want to indict these people, we want to prosecute them, we want to hold accountability. I don't think the American people can handle another scandal like that again. I don't think that we should have to see our judicial institutions fail in this way and actually target Americans. So there has to be some accountability, but that's the real word. Accountability, not retribution. It can't be a revenge tour. It has to say rule of law matters. This is a thing that has been a violation of law, and these are people that are held to the highest standards. In theory, the people that have the most responsibility to say the right thing and do the right thing. It's kind of interesting because we've talked about the FISA court. You and I have talked about it before.
Yes.
And I know this is a regular topic that people worry about. How did they lie to the FISA court? One of the things that has to happen, it's one of the recommendations that I've put in there for the incoming FBI director, is you need to grant a clearance to all the members of the judiciary committees, the people that do oversight of judiciary, because as it stands right now, the only people that are read into what FISA courts do is the intelligence committees. And so those are a different animal, and they don't have oversight capabilities. So we really need to give oversight the read-in on the security protocols to come in there and actually do the job that they are supposed to do, because otherwise—
hold on. I want to stop you there because that's very— you're going to get ahead of me. You're way smarter than I am. You've already told me that. But I'm trying to follow you. The FISA court doesn't get oversight from the Judiciary Committee. It gets oversight from intelligence. That's a problem because intelligence, they're the ones that were going to the FISA court. So if I hear you right, Jim Jordan's committee would have to say okay to a continuation of a FISA warrant?
Well, what they should do is be able to investigate it internally and have the clearances read in from the FBI to go and actually do that look. Okay. What you always hear about is sometimes they bring somebody into a skiff and they brief them up and then they leave. When that person comes in, they've been basically read in on very selective programs, but that's not what oversight is. If we're being honest about oversight, what you have to have is the ability to look at the books. I mean, think about any audit that anybody has ever done. And if you've done it honestly, you got to say, here's my books, take a look at them and tell me what you think. And I've participated in FISA audits at the FBI's Washington field office. And for whatever it's worth, I'm a pretty bright guy. I like to think I am.
Yes.
And I failed my audit because it was so complicated to use the actual internal system, not to do what I meant to do, but to actually mechanically operate in a thing that's called what is it, mitigation, I want to say, or minimization. I wasn't even able to do that in the software that they've put out there. And that software, by the way, is the exact software that goes directly from the NSA into an FBI field agent's ability to do their job. So I can look at raw FISA in that, and I didn't have the ability to redact and make things sort of safe for consumption and to share around. That all, by the way, is Obama-era legacy. That is something that people don't realize happened in 2016. Obama actually opened the door from the NSA and said, yeah, you can have access at the FBI to all of the raw FISA, not stuff that's been analyzed, not stuff that's been looked at, but like I can look into Joe Pag's email and just read it to see if you've been talking to Russians. Because if I have one Russian overlapping you, then I can say, well, I'm going to take a look at Joe too, because I mean, here he is. I need to protect Joe from potential Russian, recruitment. Wow. And that never existed until 2016.
Well, and there's got to be a reason why he did that. It is Kyle Seraphin, Seraphin. Go follow him over on Rumble. Go to KyleSeraphin.com. Specifically about the FISA stuff, and I don't want to get into the weeds too much. At the end of 16, beginning of 17, we know that they were re-upping this ability to continue the warrant by lying to the judge. I can say that without any fear of repercussions, because they were lying. They were planting news stories, as I said. They were pretending there was new evidence they found when they didn't find any new evidence. They just wanted to keep on surveilling Trump Tower. They pretended it was about Carter Page. It wasn't. They were surveilling the entire place. So having said that, I agree with you. No retribution, but you can't just get away with that. Or else, why would the future FBI directors and assistant directors, why would they ever stop?
Yeah, there's no reason. It shouldn't just be losing your bar license for a year like Kevin. I think it was Kevin Klimesmith that actually did it. And
one guy went down.
And he literally inverted the meaning of an email. He took the email and he added a not or took out a not to 180 degrees change the meaning of an email to be able to re-up a FISA. People don't understand how aggressive and capable FISA warrants are. They can go as deep as putting microphones into your home, bugging your physical devices, taking over some of the electronics that are going to be in your personal vehicle, things like that. Like, it is a really invasive capability to do that. And we might need that in case we need to keep Americans safe. But you only get tools like that if you are, in fact, judicious with the use of them, and you've proven yourself worthy of being able to sort of have that extreme power. The FBI has proven itself unworthy of it, and it kind of needs to go into a penalty box. One of the other recommendations I said is that they should have to wear suits every day. I don't like wearing a suit, by the way, Joe. I'm not a big guy into wearing suits, but you need to wear a suit because when you don't do your job, this is like old school enlisted type stuff. If you don't do your job properly, you got to show up in your blues or your class A's every single day to be able to show that you understand what it is that you're putting on your body. And you need to show people from the outside, I'm going to hold myself accountable. And one of the ways I do it is dressing the part. The FBI has gotten very slovenly and very relaxed in this way, and it actually has crept into the sort of moral foundations and the principles they should be operating under. So I think some penalty box time is necessary. I'm
with you. Kyle Seraphin, FBI whistleblower, former FBI agent. Go and check out his podcast over on Rumble. Kyle Seraphin is the first and last name. I want to finish up on FISA this way. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, that's what it stands for. There was nothing going on between Trump and the Russians. That was all fake from the dossier. I think either FISA has to go away or they've got to completely reform it to where you prove there is a foreign connection and not proof that you're proving something that your agency already said or some complicit news agency. Would you be okay with it going away or completely reforming it? Something's got to happen with it, doesn't it?
So I was asking this question to people that did intel for a living for a very long time, like 20, 30 years at a time. And the answer is that FISA actually is a relatively new creation, and it was towards the tail end of the Cold War. We didn't have FISA or the capabilities of FISA all the way through the bulk of the Cold War right up until it started ending.
Right.
So I'm fairly confident you can get rid of it and you're going to be okay. You might want to be able to have a little bit of an expedited process for getting Title III warrants, and you need to probably have Congress pass some statutes that's going to allow you to say, okay, there's probable cause to believe that there's a crime. You're going to need those crimes laid out. But you could do that. That just takes real hard work of people doing the job that they get paid to do and showed up to do it in Congress. But with those parameters, I'd be totally fine with it. I think it totally makes sense. The problem is that it makes your job harder, which is the right thing for the American people. Like, if your job is an investigator and you are going to go out there and potentially deprive people of either privacy or their liberties, shouldn't you have to work at it? So
of course.
I never had a problem when somebody told me, I wanted to make it easier for my job. It's like, no, your job is supposed to be hard. That's what you signed up for, brother. It's got to be something that you put in the work. And if you can put in the work and you can back it up, you can have access to all kinds of things.
Right.
And if you can't, it's not for you.
You make perfect sense. It's Kyle Seraphin. What do you make of these guys showing up at people's doors? Hey, I saw you posted something on Facebook. Wanted to talk to you about it. I want to ask a few questions. Since when is the FBI monitoring Facebook? Unless I say I'm going to kill and then name somebody, why are you showing up to investigate why I'm against the pro-Palestinian protest? I mean, this is literally your former agency is showing up. And by the way, they're wearing T-shirts and hats and they look scrubby. You're right. They should be wearing suits. But what do you make of them showing up at the door, knocking on the door of some 70-year-old lady saying, why did you post that?
So there's this thing that the FBI constantly does to avoid being scrutinized. It's called the First Amendment caveat. So they'll open these cases under a system called eGuardian. That means that one of your neighbors, by the way, snitched on you and said, oh, I saw this post. It's really a problem. So it's usually not the FBI finding it. It's that it's been reported.
Okay.
But they know that it's going to work. Now, what they do is they get this eGuardian system, which is for all reporting from everything from, potential school shooter all the way up into your Facebook posts or garbage.
Right.
And this goes out to a field office and they have to address them. And anything that fits into a parameter where they think they can put it underneath a threat, and this is another big issue. Threats are very nebulous. Then they may be able to contact you. Now, an honest person is going to look at it, say this is First Amendment protected activity, and they're going to throw that lead away. That's what I used to do. Occasionally, you get one that would say like, I'm coming for you, and I'll see you soon or something.
Right.
And I would pick up the phone and call that person and say, hey, I got a tip that you're making threats. Can you tell me about this? And by the way, you can hang up on the FBI if they call you.
Right.
And they would be like, oh, I'm going to come for the guy's job. Like I want to run for mayor. And you're like, oh, okay, fine. So then you close it. So that stuff is all fine. And if you're going to knock and talk on the door, like they should be leading with you don't have to talk to me. Because if you want to earn credibility, that's how you do it. You tell people,
yes,
look, you don't have to talk to me. You're not required to. You're not being detained. I have a couple of questions. You've been reported as, potentially a threat. I'd like you to explain it if you're willing to give me any context. And if you want to tell me to piss off, that's okay too. And that should be the way that you handle these things. By the way, you get a lot of people that will talk to you if you do it that way. I used to do that. But that's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is people that are basically going out there in bad faith. They're operating in poor faith. And then they are either being embarrassed or they are actually ensnaring people, because most people talk because when they hear the three letters FBI, something happens inside your sympathetic nervous system that makes your heart beat and your hands get cold.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
You feel like running, and they act a little bit more inappropriately than they otherwise, and they will say things just to make you go away, and sometimes it's self-incriminating. So I always tell people ABCD, always be closing the door to the FBI. That's a real simple thing to remember. And if you do that, you won't have any problems, but we need to reform the parameters that sends these agents out there in the first place, because there needs to be a filter, a BS filter, if you will, that the agent says, I'm empowered to not go and knock on doors and scare people.
It is Kyle Seraphin. Go follow him everywhere. Kyle, less than a minute, but I need to know, job one for Kash Patel when he gets in the seat.
He needs to grab a hold of the management culture. He needs to put in a strong deputy director, and he needs to start wrangling the senior executive service aggressively. They need to get back on mission. Anybody that violated the law, anybody that suborned violations of the law needs to be removed. And then we need to start promoting people that just wanted to do the job and take this away from an intel focus. And as Kash likes to say, go be cops. They need to get back to investigating crime as a primary responsibility.
Is it a matter? Steve Friend, a friend of both yours and mine, he has said, disarm the FBI, make them work with local law enforcement to do a better job. Does that make sense?
It's a reasonable thing to discuss, and I don't think there's any problem with it. Steve and I agree on pretty much all the stuff he talks about. So, yeah, is it an interesting technique? It certainly would change the game as far as being able to ask people who are used to doing armed, investigations in the street and make them be accountable that way. It would definitely change the dynamic and the power dynamic for sure.
And they know the community much better. It's KyleSeraphin.com. Go follow him there. Also on Rumble. Kyle, thanks for making time, brother. Talk to you soon.
Appreciate it, Joe.
All right, my man. We're back after this. Stay right here.